Why I want to work for the VA? It's simple, to help people that are like me. It's all about taking care of veterans.
I've worked a lot of different government agencies. The difference is that I come to work knowing that I'm going to help somebody today.
When you truly understand the patient that you're taking care of isn't just a patient, but a service member who raised their hand to defend our rights, do you have the ability to make a difference in the lives of those who trust you to care for them?
For more information, visit www.vacareers.va.gov.
Well, happy Tuesday and welcome to VA Careers Live. My name is Mike Owens and I'm a recruitment marketing specialist for the Veterans Health Administration, as well as your host for our weekly segment, Talk About It Tuesday. If you're new to the broadcast, I just want to let you know that we are here every Tuesday at 12 noon Eastern Time, so feel free to grab a drink, grab a snack, and join us as we talk about careers here at VA. Also, whether you're new to the broadcast, you've been watching us for the last 2 years, we want you to be part of the broadcast, so feel free to leave any comments, questions in the comment section below. Our team and I will be here to make sure we answer those questions and answer those questions and make sure those comments are addressed. But we also want you to share our broadcast. We all know someone who wants to work here at VA, so we ask that you please share our broadcast, and we have a special hashtag that's attached to this broadcast, and that's hashtag work at VA. Again, hashtag work at VA. Share the broadcast. Let's make sure that we get all of this information out to as many people as possible. So first, before we get started, I want to apologize about last week. We had some technical difficulties. Last week was kind of some resume advice, and then I was going to answer some questions live, but we had technical difficulties on my end. So we're going to attempt to do that again today. So today's broadcast, I'll go ahead and spout out some resume advice for a federal resume, and then I'll answer some questions. But because we were cut off last week, I'll probably answer some questions from last week and answer some questions that you guys put in the comment section today. So again, please, if you want a question that to be answered, make sure you go ahead and put that in the comment section today, because I will be online today to answer those questions. Also, since we had technical difficulties last week, I may ask my producer to kind of wave at me periodically through the broadcast to make sure that I'm still live and not just talking to a dead screen. So, but first, I want to talk about college football. We had college football this weekend. Most of you who watched this broadcast, you guys know that I work and am from the New Orleans area, so I am an LSU fan, and that was such a heartbreaking game. We lagged the whole game when we finally had a 99-yard drive at the end to almost tie the score, and right at the last second, end of the game, the extra point got blocked, and we lost that game 23-24. So if you are a college football fan, which I know a lot of you are, go ahead and put which college team that you root for in the comment section, and tell us if they won or lost this weekend. Of course, I'm LSU. I'm gonna follow them. I love them, even in wins and losses. So again, but before, put your favorite college football team in there, and let us know how they did this past weekend. Of course, I told you I had my heartbreaker with LSU. So while you're doing that, I'll go ahead and get started on our resume advice so we can hurry up and get to these questions. So again, if you have any questions you would like me to answer, go ahead and put that in the comment section, and we'll try to get through those today. So just a little bit of resume advice. Resume advice can last for almost 3 hours if I wanted to. So the advice that I'm gonna give you, or the tips that I'm gonna give you today, is not all the tips I can give you. I just handpicked a few, and from there you can decide. If you need any more tips, you can ask us, and we can make sure we get that information to you. So the biggest thing when dealing with your resume and applying for a job here at the VA, the first thing is make sure you read the announcement. All right. A lot of times we just see the job title. If it's a job title that we've held in another position before, we figure, okay, I'm automatically qualified. If it says general engineer, and you've been an engineer your whole career, and you see general engineer position open at a VA facility, you're just like, oh man, automatically, guess what? I'm an engineer. I'm gonna go ahead and apply for it without reading the announcement. And sometimes when we don't read the announcement, we don't see what the hiring manager is actually looking for within that candidate, and we end up becoming ineligible or not being hired for that position because we didn't read the announcement. When it comes to the announcement regarding your resume, make sure that you recognize the keywords in the announcement and make sure those keywords are found in your resume. Make sure you understand the key theme of the announcement. And when I say key theme is that, yes, they may be looking for an engineer, but maybe they're looking for an engineer with a specific skill, or maybe they're looking for an engineer that has supervisory experience, or maybe they're looking for an engineer, that's a team leader. And you have to make sure that that language is that theme that's in that job announcement is also shown in your resume. So again, number one, read the announcement. Number two is, again, after you read the announcement, make sure your resume is tailored to the announcement. Now, am I telling you to copy and paste anything? No, I will never tell you to copy and paste, because you have to be your authentic self in your resume. All right. But again, use keywords and phrases. If you see that there's keywords that are used throughout that job announcement, make sure those keywords are used throughout your resume. Make sure that the relevant information jumps out. So if the hiring manager is looking for certain items in a candidate and you have those items on your resume, make sure those bullet points or those items jump out at the hiring manager. The last thing you want the hiring manager to do is have to go dig for that information in your resume. So if you know that the hiring manager is looking for someone that has supervisory experience, or that has experience leading people, make sure that your experience that you have leading people jumps out at the hiring manager. Make sure all that relevant information is up top, and make sure that it jumps out at the hiring manager. Now, this is for people who are current federal employees or have held a federal employee or a federal position in the past. If you've had any positions that held any GS grade, make sure that your GS grade is on your resume. So if your highest GS grade was a GS 12 and you're applying for GS 13 position, make sure that on your resume it shows that position that you were in or at some point, or the position that you're currently in, is a GS 12 position. Or any job that you've had on your resume that was a federal position, make sure that your pay grade is on that resume. Make sure that this is a key thing too, make sure that when you list your employers on your resume, make sure that you have the name of the employer, make sure that you have the job title, and one of the most important things is make sure you have your start date and end date for those positions. All right, because as a hiring manager, we want to know how long were you in that position, and we want to make sure that you have a consistent timeline. So again, please, when you're listing your employers on your resume, make sure you have the employer's name. You can even put the city and state where you held that job. Make sure your job title is on there, and make sure that you have the dates that you worked at that job. Make sure that you list any awards from that position, and also make sure that you include all education. All right, all education, whether it was, you can even do I've seen people put high school diplomas on resumes. If you have an associate's degree or a certificate, maybe from a community college, whether you have a bachelor's, a master's, JD, MD, PhD, make sure that all that information is on your resume. All right. Now, here's another one for those of us who are in the military, or some of you that may be reservists or National Guardsmen in the military. If you have an active security clearance, make sure that that's listed on your resume. Why? Because hiring managers want to know that type of stuff. You have to be a very trustworthy person to have a security clearance in the United States government. So if you're trying to work for a government agency, and someone sees that you have an active clearance, they know that you're already a trustworthy person. Now, here working at VA, yes, you will still go through the VA background check, but sometimes having that security clearance can help that process go a little bit smoother and go a little bit faster. And I'll use myself as an example. When I started working for the VA, I was in the Air Force National Guard. I was in the Air Force, and I had a secret clearance. And although VA still did their background information on me, it made their background check a little bit easier, and it made it go smoother because I've already had an active clearance. So if you are in the military, whether you're active or reservist, or you're getting out or you're out the military and you still have an active clearance, no matter what, if you have an active security clearance, please put that on your resume. Even if the job doesn't require you to have a active security clearance, make sure you have that on there. Make sure, I know this is one of those ones where you're like, Mike, this is just a no-brainer. Make sure you have your contact information up to date, because if your resume gets to a hiring manager and they want to actually interview you, they're going to contact you based off the information that you have on your resume. So most of the time they're going to call you, or they're going to send you an email. So please make sure your email address is up to date, and make sure that your contact information is up to date. Another thing is make sure your references are up to date. So let me take a pause here. Katie, my producer, wave at me. Now she's waving at me, so that means we're still good. And as I told you in the beginning, we had technical difficulties last week, so I'm just making sure that we're still good. So thank you. Again, make sure your references are up to date, because again, everyone who works for the VA, they will tell you that one of the last things of the application process, right before they select you for a position, is that they do call your references. So if you have bad references, or you have references that where their numbers have changed, then that can hold up the start process for your position. So make sure all your contact information on your references are up to date. And last but not least, again, I can have a lot of resume advice, but I don't want to go too long because I want to get to some of these questions. Make sure you add special skills, all right? If you type over 2,000 words per minute, and I know I'm being sarcastic, but if you're a great typer and a fast typer, make sure you have that in your special skills section. Another one that's a good special skill to have, if you are bilingual, if you speak and are fluent in more than one language, please put that in your resume, because you may, if someone sees that you're fluent in another language, maybe that language is used normally or is commonly used at that VA facility, and that can be something that can help propel you to the top of the chain. Because if you, let's say you're fluent in Spanish, and you work and you're trying to work at a facility where there's a big Hispanic population, guess what? Being bilingual and being fluent in Spanish can help propel you to the top of the chain. So again, if you speak another language, no matter what it is, make sure that you have that special skill on your resume. So with that, again, that was just a little small questions from last week and from this week. So it looks like Latoya has a question about clearances. She says, if clearance is inactive, do you recommend adding it to the resume? Now, I guess it won't hurt, because if you had a clearance and it's inactive because you left the military, but you've had it, yeah, I would put it on there. Yeah, go ahead and put it on there. But make sure that you put that you've held that clearance. Don't make sure you have the wording in your resume that shows that you've held that clearance, that it's not active. You can put inactive, and you can put why it's inactive. Hey, I left the service 2 years ago, but I did hold a top secret clearance, or I did hold a secret clearance, but it's inactive because I'm now out the military. But yeah, definitely that can help, because again, having an active clearance or having a clearance at some point can help in the background, help in the background check that the VA holds if they hire you. All right. So thank you, Latoya, for that question. So that was a question from this week. So let me go to one from last week. John asked, how long does the hiring process last? And John, I would just say that it just varies. I can't give you an answer. I can't say, hey, it only lasts a week, it lasts 2 weeks, it lasts 3 weeks. It just depends. There's a lot of different variables that goes into the hiring process. It goes to how quickly do they need this person in this position? Because sometimes the VA may have a vacancy, and that vacancy may not be urgent, which means that they don't need to fill that position like right then and there. It could be the schedule of the hiring manager and the interview panel. Again, there's more than one person that's going to be interviewing you on the interview panel. So all their schedules have to align, because again, their main job is not to interview people. They still have their meetings that they have to attend throughout the day. They still have their work requirements that they have to attend throughout the day. So the interview panel have to all get together and make sure that they can plan some time to interview so that they can interview candidates. And again, once they interview candidates, then they may have to do a second round of interviews. Sometimes they can pick a candidate from the first round. Sometimes they may have to have a second round. So that may add to that. Once the candidate is selected, in most cases, the hiring manager does not contact the candidate that was selected. They send that person's name and information back to Human Resources. Then it's Human Resources that contacts the candidate to let them know that they've been selected for the position. And then that depends on the workload on Human Resources, because if it's only one position that the facility is working on, then maybe you may get an email from Human Resources quicker. But if they're trying to hire 100 people, it may be a couple of weeks before you even get that interview after your name's been submitted back to Human Resources. So again, I wish I can give you, John, a definite answer, but I really can't, because it just varies on just what's going on in that office at that time. So thank you for that question. So let's see what other questions that we have. Samantha asks, do exact dates need to be on resumes or just month and year? I have no problem, and I've never seen anyone get pinged because they just had the month and year. If you know the exact dates, of course, you can put that on there. But again, if you know that you were hired for a position in March of 2017, you don't have to exactly put March 17. Just put the month and the date. Just put the month and the year, and that should be totally fine. So yeah, if you worked somewhere from March 2017 to April of 2022, you can just have the month and the year. I don't see any problem with that. So let's see what else we have. Let's see. I'm just scrolling. I'm scrolling. Let's see what we have. Susan says, please help me to do a functional resume that reflects the past years of living unemployed after working consecutively for over 30 years. So, yeah, so I would just say, Susan, if you spent the last few years unemployed, I would just start with your most current position and just go from there. But if you did some things while you were unemployed, maybe you volunteered, or maybe you did some, volunteer work or anything that you've done while you were, I guess, technically unemployed that can help in your job search, make sure you put that in your resume, because again, you don't have to just put paid experiences in your resume. Unpaid experiences are just as important as your paid experience. So if you've had any position or you've done anything that you were not paid for, make sure you put that in your resume. So Susan, if you've done anything in the past few years while you were unemployed that can help you or that is relevant to the job search that you're going to be doing, make sure you have that in your resume. And then when it comes to your paid experience, just start at the last paid experience position that you had and just move down. It seems like you have a lot of work experience. So yeah. And in your cover letter, I would, what also would help you too, Susan, I would say have a cover letter. That way your cover letter, you can explain in your cover letter, why you were unemployed or what was the circumstances around that. And you can kind of add what you've done while you were unemployed. So for anyone that's listening, if you have been unemployed the last few years and you're trying to find a job, but you have a lot of work experience, just not in the last couple of years, I would say that the cover letter is probably best for you, because the cover letter, you can explain some of the stuff that you can't really explain in a resume. So I hope that helps, Susan. Thank you for submitting that question. I think this is a Chandel. Chandel asks, are resumes manually reviewed if they don't include keywords? Yes. What happens is when you apply for a job, most VA positions you apply on usajobs.gov, and what happens is once the job closes, um, once the job closes, it goes through a scanning process on USA Jobs. And it doesn't just scan keywords. So I'm not going to sit here and say if you don't have keywords from the job announcement in your resume that you won't make it to the hiring manager. If you have relevant work experience, no matter if you're using keywords or not, there's a good chance you're going to go to the hiring manager. Once you get to the hiring manager, then yes, your resume is manually looked over by the interview panel or the hiring panel. Maybe it's one person, maybe it's a handful of people, but once your resume is referred to the hiring manager, there are actual physical people looking over your resume, and they are, I guess, what they're doing is that they're looking at all your work experience and they're rating you to see if you're one of the top candidates who may be selected for interview. So again, for every position, you never know. I may post a position on a vacancy on USA Jobs, and I may get 200 people may apply for it, and about 75 people are referred to the hiring manager. So from there, the hiring managers won't have time to hire. They would like to, but they don't have time to interview 75 people. So so they're going to have to find a handful of people. So they have to go through all those resumes. So your resume will be manually looked over by the hiring manager or the interview panel. All right. Brenda asked, does your military rank help with applying for a position? For example, applying for GS-12 retired lieutenant colonel. So thank you for that question, Brenda. Military rank means a lot, but there are so many things that hiring managers look over that sometimes military rank, although it's good and it can help. So if you are an officer or senior enlisted person, I would put that in my resume, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to make you the best candidate. It'll make you a good candidate, but I know we have the military rank to GS level conversions that are online, and sometimes that helps and sometimes they're accurate, but I've seen people that were lower enlisted. I've seen E4s and E5s get hired into GS 12 and 13 positions. So, and I've seen field grade officers and senior enlisted come in as GS 5s and GS 6. So I guess a lot of it will mostly depend on your work experience, and is your work experience relevant to that position? Your rank can help you, but it's not going to, for a lot of time, it's not, I'm not going to say never, but a lot of times it's not going to be the deciding factor. The deciding factor is going to be, are you the best candidate for that position based on the work experience that you've put in your resume. So let's see, I think I have time for one more. I see my producer's getting antsy back there. So I will see. Let's see. I'm scrolling. So I'm sorry. Okay. Angela says, what does the second interview typically consist of? Again, it just depends. I can go off of my personal experiences. Normally when I've had the first interview, it was the generic questions that, the generic performance-based interview questions that you may find online. And that's the first interview. If you are in my experience, the second interview that I remember, I had one second interview for a position at the VA. It was the actual person that was going to be my boss. That person was calling me and was just wasn't asking me questions, basically just telling me what the job would consist of. I guess they had made the decision that they were going to select me based off the first interview. But before they kind of, I guess, pulled the trigger, they wanted to make sure that I was a good fit. So the person that was actually going to be my boss called me for a second interview. And it wasn't really a Q&A. It was more of that person just asking me just, would I feel comfortable doing this type of stuff? This is what your job is going to consist of, even though it may change over time. It was just more of a casual conversation of what I should expect if I was selected for that position. Again, some people may have second interviews where they go through a whole nother set of questions. But typically, from my experience, it's a lot of times the second interview is actually from the hiring manager or the person that would be your supervisor, and that person's going to call you and just maybe ask you a couple of personal questions about your experience in the past, or just basically not personal questions, but going to ask you about some personal experience in your last job or in your job experience. Or they may just have a casual conversation, just talking to you about what to expect if you're selected for the position. So, So that was our last question for today. And again, I want to thank everyone that participated. We're going to be doing this a lot more. So again, if you have any questions throughout the time that any of these broadcasts are being done, make sure you put those questions in there, because no matter if it's me, my coworkers, Tim or Kendra, they will make sure to kind of answer some of these questions. And I thank you for the participation. I see a lot of answers. That means a lot of people are tuning in, and I really do appreciate that. But if your question was not answered, your comment was not addressed, it's not done once this broadcast ends. We'll go through those comments and questions still throughout the day and throughout the week to make sure that all of those questions are answered and all those comments are addressed. So before we leave, again, I told you guys my heartbreak with LSU football team this weekend. Make sure you put who's your favorite college football team and how did they do this past weekend. So with that, as always, I thank you for watching. Make sure you share the broadcast. Use the hashtag #WorkAtVA. As always, I challenge everyone to go to vacareers.va.gov. Again, our website is vacareers.va.gov. And we have all the latest and greatest information about careers here at VA. So thank you for watching. As always, if it's Tuesday, we're definitely going to talk about it, and we will see you next time. Have a great day.